presentation. You're taking a regional perspective of what has happened, and also the new structures that have been created after 9/11 that has in many ways enabled us to make progress to dismantle terrorist networks in the region and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, let us now move to the second and the last session of this particular defense session, and that is going to be Q&A. I would very much now invite you to ask questions, ask very brief questions, and we will provide brief responses. Yes.
Last before the lunch.
Yes.
So good afternoon, sir. I'm Shawan Kulatunga. Please bear with me because my question is not going to be that brief. And my question is twofold, sir. And it's directed to Professor Gunaratna and Dr. Sara Visilva. The first one is about the very liberal use of the term diaspora. Whilst agreeing with Professor Gunaratna that the diaspora is not monolithic, are we not antagonizing the open-minded elements of the diaspora by this very generalized use of the term? The next part of my question is to do with the threat matrix, where the three are intent, opportunity, and capability. Now, out of these three, I feel that opportunity and capability can be addressed at the ground level, but intent is what is more complex to deal with. So, by antagonizing the more open-minded elements of the diaspora by the generalized use of the term, are we not adding fuel to intent?
Let me ask Dr. Sara Visilva to respond to the second part of your question, and then after that I will provide you my own thinking on how to manage the diaspora in a more sophisticated way rather than perceiving the diaspora as a threat.
Thank you for the question, sir. In terms of the diaspora, as you say rightly, that antagonizing a certain segment of a population always inflares the intent of that particular population. But for the Tamil diasporas, I think that the intent element is there with the radicalized element, and Professor Gunaratna will definitely say that not all of the Tamil diasporas are a significant threat, but for the ones who have these radicalized ideas, now realistically speaking, we might have the intent, but I personally think that they do not possess the necessary operational and the organizational capability to conduct any attacks in the Sri Lankan soil to begin with. And that is why now, especially in the post-war context, we see that the diasporas have been focusing on the political activism of, they're trying to promote the Tamil Eelam separatist ideas through political activities because they know that physically they cannot launch any attacks in the Sri Lankan soil and even abroad. So that's why in that sense I think intent is important. It's an imminent threat to Sri Lanka, but the diasporas will not have the capability of launching attacks here at the moment.
Let me give you a very quick response. You see, the Tamil diasporas, the number may be about million to 1.2 million. That is for every 3 Sri Lankans who live here. There's a Sri Lankan Tamil who lives overseas. People of Sri Lankan Tamil heritage. They are of course now citizens of Canada, of UK, France, Australia, Germany, Malaysia, other countries. But certainly they hark back and they look at the developments in their homeland. They still want to return to Sri Lanka whenever they have a holiday, if they have resources. And as I mentioned, in every flight that flies into Colombo, you will see more than 50% of the plane. They are of Sri Lankans mostly of Sri Lankan Tamil heritage. And there's a huge transformation in the thinking of the Sri Lankan Tamils, especially after they visit the north, because their minds have been frozen. You see, living in a period at a time where they left Sri Lanka. But Sri Lanka has progressed immensely since then. So I think that we need to develop a more sophisticated strategy of engaging them. I think our colleague Hasit, when he presented, he said that there is engagement. But I think that I want to say that the engagement is much more than what was perhaps reflected in that paper. And I see that the Sri Lankan expatriate community as a gold mine, because they want to come and donate their time. In fact, there is a new center that is being created in Vaunia. That is a center it's a happiness center that is treating the LTT disabled cadres. There are more than 1,200 cadres who need long-term treatment, medical treatment. You see, I spoke to a LTT girl very recently from Trincomalee. She has still shrapnel in her body, and she told me when she traveled from Trincomalee to Colombo to come, she comes by bus, and the shrapnel in her body slowly cuts her. You see, so I think that there's a new capability that is being built by the Sri Lankan, one of the foundations, the Foundation for Reconciliation, working with Sri Lankan Tamils who are living overseas to look after those disabled cadres. So I think that there are many projects Sri Lankan Tamils have now come forward and they are engaging and working. And I think that we need to broaden this engagement and we need to invite more people to come and work in participation so that they will be a productive diaspora. Finally, let me say that in my view, less than 10% of the Sri Lankan Tamils who are living overseas are engaged in LTT political activism. Less than 10%. It's a very small number. That is why I thought that Hasitha, whenever he presents, the first line he should say is, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to speak to you about a tiny segment of the Sri Lankan Tamil diaspora that is engaged in political activism, because their activism does not reflect the true attitude and the thinking of the entire diaspora, which is a very productive group of people. Do you want to respond very briefly?
Yes, I'm advocating Professor Rohan, but the thing is, Sri Lankan nationalists, single nationalists believe the diaspora has spread since 1983. But in recently they show their willingness to development and participate and everything, and also most of Tamil diaspora people help to government to re-establish and reconstruction in northern area. For example, recently we for the Centauri, and another thing is Tamil diaspora, Sri Lankan Tamil diaspora always want to come back to Sri Lanka and participate in the development process. So to the process, we need to provide a better approach, the good approach like the cooperative approach, the cooperative approach to establish the law and order as well as provide their facilities to their own kind. That's one.
Thank you very much. The next question, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is from Delhi. My question goes to Professor S.P. Divakar. As you mentioned about making the reconciliation policy of Sri Lanka, that you've been mentioning about the concentrated areas or the views which should be taken to implement this reconciliation. What should be the time frame and the strategic steps which should be taken to implement this reconciliation as the time, the situations and the social environment changes, and as in my view, the first and foremost step has been taken with ending the 30-year war and with preventing the further conflict. So what should be the time frame and the procedure which should be taken to implement this reconciliation policy in Sri Lanka?
Thank you very much for that question. May I invite Mr. Divaratna to provide his expert answer to your question?
I think that's a very good question, indeed. But only thing is that there is no time frame for reconciliation. It is, I told you, it's a long process. It is about the government process. It goes on because the process is very deep and very broad. If you try to say that reconciliation can be achieved within 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, it is not a technical thing. You want to deal with hearts and minds of the people, beliefs, aspirations, thinking, all that. That is social reconciliation. The another part, of course, is political reconciliation. Political reconciliation means issues, what brought about this conflict, you know. So there are various committees appointed and all that. Of course, you can like the all-party conference and, you know, all that you can fix up a time frame of 2 or 3 years. But for social reconciliation, that is the most important thing. The process, it takes on. Ultimately, you can see the result, you can see the outcome by doing the process. But I don't think that it is, we can have a policy, but I don't think that it is advisable to have a time frame. But as you go on maybe 3 or 4 years, we will see the result. But resettlement, we had time frame. Because we could not keep the people in the welfare centers for 3, 4, 6 years. So we had a fix as early as possible. So we did it within 2.5, maximum, less than 2 years, the resettlement. But reconciliation is not a technical thing. It is, you got to build the confidence of the people. It takes a long time. It is a process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Divaratna. You know, a computer or a machine you can buy off the shelf, but expert, it takes many years to build. Mr. Divaratna worked for many years in the Northeast. He understands the pulse of the people, and I think that his answer clearly reflects the need for us to develop a sustained strategy, sustained plans and programs to engage those communities affected, not only in the North, but also in the South. And I hope that many of you will write your term papers and your theses on the subject of winning hearts and minds, of stability operations, of creating a harmonious living, of reconciliation. These are the new ways of building security, of building stable and a sustainable society where we will have no return to conflict, no return to violence again. Let me invite you to ask the last question for this particular session before we break for lunch.
So, my question goes to Mr. Divaratna. Sir, it is true that Sri Lanka government and the Sri Lankan security forces did tremendously job for the Tamil people who are displaced in the north and east area. Now we are talking about only Tamil people. So in other hand, there were many Sinhala families displaced during the war. So my question is, for these people, for the nation building, what are the different mechanisms you have taken up to now?
Yes, in fact, Sri Lanka experienced not only one displacement, there were several displacements, multi-displacement in Sri Lanka since 1980s. The first was to displace was Sinhalese, then of course the Muslims, and then was the Tamils. So we, in fact, 2009 was a decisive year for us, having defeated terrorism. So we were saddled with one of the most difficult tasks of accommodating 300,000 internally displaced people immediately after the humanitarian operation. So we got to give priority to them. So they were in, as you know, you all handle it with us, and they were in welfare centers. Our priority, that is why the task force was appointed. Our task force to resettle them immediately. So our task force that time, we did it till 2012, and welfare centers were all closed down in Sri Lanka. There are few welfare centers, they are not welfare centers in Jaffna. They were created by the NTT, but other than that, there isn't a single welfare center in the north. And almost every family who were in welfare centers were were resettled, plus the people who were living with friends and relatives. That is why you get the number 147 families. We didn't have that number of families in the welfare center. We had 85,000 families. But we have resettled 147 families. That means those who were living elsewhere with their friends and relatives and rented out houses, they've gone back to their places of origin. Now with regard to Muslims and the Tamils, Muslims, of course there is a problem of few, but the Muslims who were displaced and settled down in Putlam are better off than the original Muslims in Putlam. They got all the facilities. But there are few people, they are landless people because the Muslim population is increasing. They've gone into 3 or 4 folds. So there are few families who are so government has recently taken a decision to give them landless families, whether they Muslims or Tamils, state lands, so that process is on. The third is the Sinhalese. As you know, there were 15 to 20,000 when you go through the 1981 census. You can see the number of Sinhalese who are living in Jaffna, Kilnochi, Mullaitivu and particularly Mena. Mena we had 8,968. But now Jaffna doesn't have more than 23 numbers Sinhalese. Kilnochi none, Mullaitivu none. Mena, though we had 8,961, we have only 323. So that is as with regard to Sinhalese, but we are making arrangements. If they want to come, we will treat them. They don't have land because they are also displaced. But we didn't want to take them first. Then otherwise would have been alleged that we are receiving the Sinhalese first. But we wanted to take on priorities. So we did Tamil, and of course the Muslims resettlement programs is also progressively achieved. So they will not come back to Musaili or Nanaplan or Mena. They prefer to be there in their place of in Putlam now. So I think we will, in time to come, now 2013 our priority is for this segment of Sinhalese and Muslims.
So, can I have one question?
Yes.
This is my question.
My question goes to Dr. Mata. This is one thing with regard to the regional stability in Sri Lanka, in the context of the close proximity to the Indian Ocean. And this goes to destabilize the regional context at present due to anti-Sri Lankan sentiments is popping up in the Tamil Nadu. And it might be aggravated with the external some elements, if so. So what do you think on this, the present context, the anti-Sri Lankan this thing? Thank you.
I think it is very much, it's not a major issue right now. Of course, the sentiment, like we were discussing, especially in the last UNHRC voting time for a particular photograph which resurfaced at that point of time. And to some extent, because many of the people do not know the origin of the photograph, but it's true, not true for the general people. But I think there is a lot of intelligence cooperation between India and Sri Lanka, and recently somebody in the National Security Council also told us that two people were arrested, if I'm not mistaken, in Tanjore, and they were handed over to Sri Lanka. So there is a lot of cooperation which is going on between the government of India and the government of Sri Lanka as far as intelligence sharing is concerned and defense cooperation is concerned. So these are the things which is not very much spoken in the media and otherwise, but I think there are things, because India definitely would not like a re-emergence of the situation which one has seen in the past. So therefore I think it is also in India's interest not to allow regeneration of any kind of sentiment which will pose a threat to Sri Lanka, and also will affect not only the bilateral relations between the two countries, but also it will be a threat to India, because we will not like any kind of destabilization because of the situation in Sri Lanka.
Thank you very much. I think Colonel Chandana's intervention is a very, it's a real problem that is existing, and this is an issue that we should probably discuss over many hours. But let me share my personal view. I think that Sri Lanka should have a better strategy to manage India, and even a better strategy to manage Tamil Nadu. Sri Lanka should post its best ambassador, not to Washington DC, not to London, and not even to New Delhi, but should appoint him as with the rank of a Deputy High Commissioner to Madras, to Chennai, because managing the developments in Tamil Nadu is crucial for Sri Lanka. If you look at the Sri Lankan conflict, in India we saw a total of 8 training batches of Tamil Tigers. The first training batch was in Uttar Pradesh, in Chakrata, north of Dehradun. The second batch was trained in Himachal Pradesh. All the other batches trained in Tamil Nadu. So Tamil Nadu was the main platform to create the fighting capabilities of the Tamil Tigers. But today, as Dr. Smruti said, there is reasonably good cooperation. I would say reasonably good cooperation between Sri Lankan security agencies and Indian agencies. But certainly, on the political side, I haven't seen progress. And I think that there should be Sri Lankan political leaders frequently visiting those Tamil Nadu leaders and sharing the huge development that has taken place in the Northeast, and inviting those Tamil Nadu leaders to come and visit Northeast. Even extend the invitation to leaders such as Nedumaran, such as V. Gopalasamy, known as Vaiko, Ramdos, Seaman, all those extremist leaders who are espousing an extreme form of Tamil nationalism which is detrimental to the very security of India. And I think that they themselves perhaps are driven either by money or by other considerations. And I think that Sri Lanka has made so much of progress today in the Northeast. They should be invited so that they can see the huge economic infrastructure and other developments that have taken place, the rapid resettlement, the rapid demining that has taken place. So I think that overall, the way the government has managed the developments in Tamil Nadu, we haven't done our best. And this is a matter that perhaps we should have another dedicated panel managing the relationship with Tamil Nadu. I think the relations with Delhi is perfect. It's a very good relationship. But the relationship with Chennai is imperfect. And I thank you very much for raising this question. KDU as a university is the ideal place for debate and discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, let me once again thank each one of the speakers, and I particularly want to pay a tribute to Mr. Divaratna, because I think that his presentation, his presence, his work has brought to light why there was no return to conflict in Sri Lanka. And I believe that as much as we pay a tribute to those war fighters, many of who have perished, some of who are fortunate to be alive, but we also pay a tribute to you and to your battalion, your team of those dedicated professionals who maintain that lifeline to the north, and also to the extensive work that you have done after May of 2009. I like the phrase that he used. He said that the work in reconciliation should never end. And I always inform my colleagues who are doing rehabilitation that rehabilitation is a strategy from the point of surrender or the point of capture until that person is no longer on earth, because we have to continuously engage those cadres once they are released from those rehabilitation centers. And I think that you have the right spirit. And let me once again thank each one of you for contributing to this very rich panel. Thank you.